Hello, and welcome to another brand new episode of Live from the Pool House. We are live from said pool house. I am T.L. Foster, and I like to go to concerts at night. I really don't, actually. I think that's very awful, and I am joined by...
Sandwich eating Sonya Ballantyne.
This episode... So we talked about, the last couple episodes, we just need to have a fun episode. I think this is a very fun episode, and I think this will be one. It might not be as long as the other ones, but I think this will be kind of like a cool down episode.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited for this episode.
Yes. Sonya, tell us, what episode is this?
So we are watching Season 1, Episode 18, The Young and the Restless, which first aired January 21st, 1991. It was directed by Jeff Melman and was written by Lisa Rosenthal. And this week, the password for this episode is "Here's 10 books." So, but I wish I had a friend like Will, so I could break into Neverland Ranch with me to show me a good time. So, yeah, I had friends that we would break into places, but we would never break into high profile places.
I was always so afraid to break into places because I'm like, I'm going to get caught. This sucks. Why would I want to do this?
Well, luckily for me, all of my my childhood break into places were all abandoned, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I guess Neverland Ranch, was that in California or where was it?
I want to say Neverland Ranch is in California. I guess I could look that up real quick. I want to say, I don't think it was in Gary, Indiana. Yeah, it was. So it was in Los Ovilos, California.
Mm-hmm. And it was filled with all kinds of man-child things or something.
Yeah, it was basically a giant amusement park. Had live animals, all the stuff that a grown adult would want in their place.
So I did look it up real briefly. So it had a Ferris wheel, a carousel, a zipper, an octopus, a pirate ship, a waiver swinger, a super slide, a roller coaster, bumper cars, and an arcade. So I wonder if it was a good arcade in terms of it was one of those Japanese ones with DDR and stuff. You know what I mean? Was it a good one, or was it just a little kid's arcade?
With the sit-down units, probably. It's probably a good one, right?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. We don't... MJ never really talked about his, video game habits, I don't think. So I don't know for sure if he was one of those, capital G gamers. So... But, yeah, so it had a zoo, too. Right. So at its height, it had orangutans, baboons, an elephant, giraffes, and Bubbles the chimp. Who I only knew because of The Simpsons, so I didn't really know that one that he had a pet chimp, or that because in The Simpsons they make it seem like Bubbles was just a stuffed animal, so I'm like, oh no, he was real. What? So,
yeah, no, like I said, I remember just kind of seeing definitely knowing about the giraffe. There's also a really good Michael Jackson miniseries about the whole Jackson 5, and I just always remember the giraffes. Who would just want to own a giraffe? What would you do with a giraffe? It's a lot. It's a huge animal.
And, I've seen giraffes. Yeah, they are pretty big. So I'm like, why would you want one? Are they fun to have around? Is it just because you can afford them? Are you having them? I don't know. It's a thing. But so I really love it whenever they make fun of Carlton's dancing, mostly because Alfonso Roberto is a trained dancer, and it takes as we've mentioned before, it takes talent to look that bad.
Yes.
Because I think we've all tried to do the Carlton dance, and yeah, it is really difficult to do it well.
Right. No, absolutely. I think I did for the 30th episode of the show. I did a small little dance for it on Twitter, and yeah, it's a lot. It's it's a lot to even just do that.
Oh, but it's so. But what we don't mention is that Will is also a terrible dancer, both
yes.
The character and in real life. So like, because like if you've seen the video for Summertime, you've seen how bad he can dance. So like, I don't know if you've seen the video recently, TL, but like they do a line and like Will's just going at it. It's fucking hilarious. But I love Will's plans for Grandma Hattie this episode. Like, as we mentioned, Grandma Hattie, well, we didn't mention this yet, but Virginia Capers returns this episode as Grandmother Hattie. And I love the plans that Will has for her trip, which includes the break and enter at Michael Jackson's house and the water park. So that sounds like a really good time. Maybe because I'm like a child at heart, so I would have a really good time with that trip.
No, it definitely like seems like it would be kind of a cool, just like be like, oh hey, I want to go to like I don't know, like maybe because we're in the COVID times, but I would love to go to a water park, but I also would not want to go to a water park. It's one of those weird things.
I know COVID is just making it weird right now, like in terms of like I just want to get outside and hang out with my friends, hang out with an old person. That would be great. Especially because you're not allowed to right now. But we digress. So she, like, Grandmother Hattie reminds me so much of my grandma. So my grandma grew up pretty poor, and we would always do arts and crafts together. So I still have a paper doll that she made for me that's hanging in my apartment. Like, I think people often disregard, like, when you do arts and crafts with a person, it's not about the finished product. It's about spending time with people. Like, whenever I would color with my dad, that would be some of my favorite times. Just because you're just hanging out. Right. And it, like people to like I really hate when people are like, well, why would I make like origami with my kids? Blah. And I'm like, no, it's not about the origami or how terrible it is. It's about spending time with your child. Anyway, but
right.
Yeah, and so I love I was also reminded of myself when Will told Grandma Hattie that she should be doing things that she loves. Like making him a sweet potato pie. This is like me asking my grandma to make me mac and cheese. So, did you ever have that situation with your older relatives where you would like, you'd make them do things because it made you happy?
So my Aunt Jill makes the world's best pound cake. Like I'm a good baker, but her pound cake is just so good. And just every time I see her, I'm like, Angela, you want to make me a pound cake? I mean, I'll do whatever you want. I just want to make you a pound cake. Like, her pound cake, so there's like three. So it's her pound cake. My uncle does like the world's best mac and cheese. Like, I love my mom's mac and cheese. But he makes it with a white sauce, and it's so good. And then my ex-stepmom makes like a sweet potato pie, but she adds pecans to it. And oh my gosh, it's just so good. Like, I'm just like, every time I think about that, I'm like, I just want that sweet. Like, just give me that recipe. I want it in my life. It's so good.
Sorry, I'm chewing because there's a food episode. But I really I didn't have sweet potato pie until very, very recently. When like I have a friend who works for a local or used to work for a local organization. And he's American from the South. And he made sweet potato pie for our Christmas gathering. And I'm like, oh my God, I've only ever heard about that on on Fresh Prince. So I really want to try it. And I really, really liked it. It was really, really good. Yeah, like I really need to try it more. Like I need more sweet potato pie in my life. Because it's not really a dish we have in Canada. Like I think people bring it here. But it's amazing. We need more of that. So there's one part in this episode that I wanted to ask you about. Did you get the whole point of the Angus and the Jersey Bull story? Like it's been 30 years and I'm still confused. Like I feel like a terrible rural resident because I did not grow up around cows. So I'm just like, so was the Angus butchered? Like what was the point?
I don't know. Like so I also didn't like. Well, I'm not super rural, but yeah, I've never really. So I don't get it. I think it's supposed to be like, man, they country, right? Like that's like kind of like the take I get from it.
I think it has to do too with the fact like when they're supposed to be having sex, the cows. Like there's a part where like because cows don't get butchered, bulls do. because like you
Right.
need the cows, like the cow, like you only need the male cows for a specific time period. So it's like you might as well take your chances now or something. I don't know. Like the full story is so confusing. So if anybody knows what the point of that story was, please call in because I really want to know. But so this episode focuses on Uncle Phil being extremely overprotective and fussing over his mother, who recently got over a cold, which Phil keeps calling a flu. And Phil is acting like a parent to Hattie, much to her resentment. And as my parents age, particularly my mom who has health issues, I find myself being a bit more like Phil here. Because it's like, this is often something that comes up in episodes of television or sitcoms with a person who is older being treated like they are frail. Like, this is also a storyline that comes up in the show Golden Girls, where Rose's mother comes to visit and Rose is treating her like she's a child. And so, yeah, like, I think it comes up a lot when you're an older adult, when you're an adult taking care of your parents now. Like, you feel like you can only, you see the gray hairs, you see all of them, and you're like, you start to realize that they're not going to be around forever. And,
Right.
yeah, so this episode hit me for that reason. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, no, you definitely, like, want to make sure, like, your parents are, like, older. Like, it's so weird now, like I said, my mom is going to be a grandmother soon.
Ooh.
And it's like, this is weird. Like, all this is weird. You shouldn't be this old, but, like, we're older. And then, like, in 10 years, am I going to be like Uncle Phil? Probably. Just be like, hey, I don't want you guys doing that. You're going to be in your 60s. Don't do that. Like,
it's like you need to do it. You need to slow down, wear a blanket, stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, I feel that way too about like my mother as well. Like, especially my dad. Like, I'll always be like, oh, like, especially when I took him to New York, I was like, Dad, like, do you need to take a rest for a while and stuff like that? Like, do you want to go back to the hotel room and like lie down? And he's like, no, let's keep hanging out and go places. And I think sometimes I don't know why we start to treat our parents like they're the kids.
Well, I think it comes from the same thing, like when you're a child and you have a parent, like it's the responsibility of like, I don't want this person to get hurt. And now they're in a vulnerable state. I have to make sure that I can do what I can to do. I don't think it's just like a parent thing. I think it's something that we do as, with people of, once you're at a certain age and you have kind of like an availability, if you see someone that you care about that is vulnerable, you want to protect them, right? It's like the same thing with like, I don't have kids, but I know there's kids I've been around that I've assisted with, and you have that same kind of like hawkishness to them as well. Just like, nothing bad better happen. You better do it this way because then something bad will happen, and I don't want anything bad to happen to you.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Like, it's still kind of, like, difficult for me, too, because I'm, like, the way, like, I don't understand parents looking after their kids, but I understand, like, one time, my nephew, bolted in the middle of a busy parking lot, and I dropped my beloved food to grab him, and I just held him close, and I'm like, how the hell do parents live like this constantly with this fear of this little thing just running out into danger? And it just like drove me nuts. Like, I can't imagine, like, I think I can see how Phil would get upset in this episode. Like, I do think he is being way too unreasonable in his expectations of Hattie, because she seems like really, she gets up at, like, 4 a.m. to clean the house and stuff like that. So it's like, she's not frail.
Right.
And so I think he just sees her, he mentions it later, but he just sees her as that person who he talked to on the phone who was like just like sniffling and just having trouble like talking without coughing. I think this episode's gonna hit me a little bit harder just because of COVID, but like I just like, oh no, like she has a flu. Do you think she had a flu or did she have a cold?
I think she may have had a cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like we live in the end times now. So, like, it's a little bit hard to be like, oh, it's just a small flu. Get over it. But, like, we're like, you're sick. You just need to not do anything whatsoever right now.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm taking a bite of my sandwich.
No, you're fine.
But I do like thinking like the bit where Hattie thinks Heavy D refers to Charlie Daniels. That always cracks me up every single time I see this episode. And for those that don't know, Charlie Daniels is an American singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist, best known for the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia." Of course, Hattie would love him because Charlie is originally from North Carolina. So, this episode is one of my favorites just for how full of life Hattie is. Like, I want to be her when I'm older because there's always this stigma that with the elderly they have to be a certain way, and Hattie is not like that at all. She reminds me so much of the elders in my life who only stop due to mobility issues, but even then they are still like wagging canes at people and like throwing their walkers at people if they get mad enough. So it's like, I think that like I don't know if it's more of like a white person thing or because like elderly for me has never been seen as like a detriment, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because the old people I know have always been spry, and they only stop because they have to.
Yeah, like I was just actually just checked up on her the other day. Like one of my aunts, like 2 years ago, she was like out canvassing for Doug Jones in Alabama, and she's like in her late 80s, and I'm like, Ruth, what are you doing? She's like, no, I got to get people out to vote. And I've just, like you said, I've never seen that. I mean, usually if I see somebody where like they cannot move, it's just that they're extremely elder. But usually, like I'm just used to seeing like, especially like if someone in my community ends up becoming older, like they're still as spry and movable, and they move around, and do all this stuff, like just as normal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think it's just like there's this idea that, and I guess that Hattie has always worked her whole life. Like even when, like imagine when she was young and had a grandmother, her grandmother was probably still out in the fields helping out and stuff. Oh, I think about in the context, like her grandmother was probably like, if we look at it, her grandmother was probably a slave. Like, would she be in that age range, I guess? Like, so like...
No, I don't think she would have been in that age range. She would have been part of sharecropper, but her parents were more than likely slaves.
Mm-hmm. So it's like she's always known hard work. So I don't imagine her seeing like, cause like work is all you know at certain when you're a certain type of person. Like, and she obviously has been working her whole life, so of course she wouldn't want to slow down, especially with because I think like. Yeah, like, with my family, my dad retired, but he's still working. And I was telling people about how when I'm older, I'm probably not going to stop working until, like, I'm in the ground. Like, I'm going to keep writing, and, like, I'll still have my hand on my pen, basically. And, like, I feel that people put this disrespect on the elderly, and I'm glad this episode kind of circumvents that. But yeah, like we see inside Will's room this episode, and I personally love every time we see it. The set design is amazing, and I love the huge Malcolm X poster mixed with the Salt and Pepper and Janet posters. I also saw a Nelson Mandela poster in the background. Around the time of the filming of this episode, apartheid in South Africa was just nearing its end. So I was a bit too young to really know about apartheid when I was a kid. Like, I remember it being talked about and Nelson Mandela and all this other stuff. But, like, it's still really bizarre to me that this was going on, like, around this time. Like this, because I don't know how much you know about apartheid in South Africa, but it was, like, such a bizarre thing, even now to look at. Like, I know it's still happening in the States, in Canada in a lot of ways. But it's still, like, wow, like, people outrightly were saying, like, whites were better and, like, that we needed to be separate.
I don't know, like, so I feel like with my history with apartheid, it is kind of more like how you look at with stuff like, with, like, American history, just because I don't have a huge, like, we hear about it, but it's something, like, I wasn't privy to. But, like, it's something where, like, if we had been in South Africa during that time, it would have been definitely something that we would have known about. Like, I learned about apartheid, like fully from like a Disney Channel movie about a white girl who had like a black girl move in with her who was from South Africa and like having to deal with that kind of racism. Mm-hmm. But like that's like how I originally heard about apartheid.
And you were like, what? So, like, that's probably how I would have been too. Like, I only learned about apartheid because of like posters I saw in the background of things. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Scrooged. But there's a bunch of anti-apartheid posters in the background in that movie, and I'm like, what the hell is like apartheid? I was like, huh? And so I looked into it, and I'm like, this is shit that shouldn't be happening. So, and then I learned about like who Nelson Mandela was, and like one of my favorite jokes in the movie My Fellow Americans, which is about former presidents, is they're having they're trying to escape the people trying to kill them, and they're talking to each other. Like, it's about two former ex-presidents, and the presidents are talking about like, who were you most excited to meet in the office? And like one of the presidents is like all proudly, he says Nelson Mandela, and the other president tells him flat out, says, I'm not a reporter. And then the president answers honestly and says, Ella Fitzgerald. Mandela was a good man, but he couldn't sing for shit. So it was like, that's how I knew about Nelson Mandela, especially because like as I grew older, I started learning more about him as well. But yeah, like it's still like a thing. Like, it's funny how things can be such big historical movements, but you don't really know about it because it doesn't really affect you, I guess is a good word. Like, because this is like a worldwide event where one character has a poster of a man who is a big part of it, and I'm like, oh, that's just the poster in Will's room.
Yeah.
Where?
No, I mean, it's definitely, like I said, he's in the age, like, this is the age where a lot of black people are, like, learning about black leaders and stuff like that. Like, no, I mean, in a room where you would have a Malcolm X poster, I think a Nelson Mandela poster isn't out of the purview.
It's still pretty cool, yeah. But speaking of Will's room, his Nintendo setup is giving me flashbacks. Because I don't know how we played Nintendo with all the controller wires in front of the TV, but I did that all the time. Like, did you do that too, where you had, like, your Nintendo balancing on the top of your TV?
All the time.
Why did we do that?
I have no idea. Well, I mean, TVs were also bigger back then, but I have no idea.
Yeah, because it got in the way and stuff. It didn't get in the way that badly, because I usually only played, like, one-player games. But I'm like, was the floor too bad for my Nintendo? Like, why the hell did I do that? Like, I couldn't do that now, though.
Right.
But, Hattie's outfit for the concert is giving me life. Like, I want to wear it to when I go to the next concert I go to, which will probably be Celine Dion next year. I plan to wear this outfit with, like, the shawl and the unisex t-shirt. I actually got that Hank Williams World Tour t-shirt made a few years back. I think I'm going to make it again. Just because I really, really loved it. And Hattie gets to shine this episode. Like, I love how rebellious she is and how fearless she is. And I love that Will treats her like a friend. And when he does try to baby her, she calls him out on it.
Right.
So it was really, really cool. Like, I just loved that part of the episode. So, my favorite bit of comedy this episode is the shot of Will's room in darkness as everyone is talking in the hallway about, like, Ashley finding out that Hattie is missing. And there's the shot of Will's dark room, and then Phil burst into the room. It's one of my favorite gags, because they're like, you hear them talking, and they're like, I went to say goodnight to Grandma, and there was only pillows under the covers. And then somebody says, well, where would she get an idea like that? And then it's like, Will. So, and then you see Will sleeping, quote unquote, and they're like, well, how is he still sleeping? Like, you yelled his name. And then he flings the blanket aside, and it's like a sphinx's head, a bunch of pillows, and his sneakers. And that's how I imagine you sleep at night, like with your sneakers sticking out of the edge of the bed.
Absolutely not. It feels so, like, sneakers are already so, like, heavy. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, that sucks.
But I love, like, the way he sets it up, like, because I really, really want to, like, I don't know, like, what gave him the idea for that, but I love the tape he uses, too. Like, when Hattie and them are explaining how she used the pillows under her covers to trick people. He's like, Grandma, this is how we do it in the new. This is how we do it in the new age, and it's like this huge speaker playing a video of him snoring and actually coughing to wake himself up, which I really, really loved. The little dedication to the craft. It was so cute.
I love that Carlton took the tape. Like, Carlton was like, yeah, I had to. This is genius. I definitely had to get this.
What was his actual quote? His quote was like, "How many nights he could sneak out with you not knowing that he's gone, and he just shoves it in his back pocket." It was really cute. I love that. But my favorite joke has to be who we already mentioned is Hattie pretending to be Ella Fitzgerald. To a handsome older man who mistakes her for Miss Ella. So I love that. Like, it was so funny because it's like freaking Hattie keeps getting mistaken for various women at this concert. So she gets mistaken for Ella Fitzgerald. Right. And there's a little teenage boy who thinks she's Queen Latifah. And I'm like,
which is like, it's like so weird, man. We're gonna get Queen Latifah later in the season. It's like, Queen Latifah's not that old.
Yeah, she's 20 at this time. Like in her early 20s, so she's not exactly old. So, but I think it's just because she's like Grandma Hattie's a woman at a rap concert, so it's like, of course that would be Queen Latifah.
Right.
Oh, wait, sorry. So, Phil and Carlton show up at the concert. And there's this cute gag where Phil asks this kid, like, have you seen a young guy in colorful clothing with the sides of his head shaved? And, like, 4 different guys walk past, including the guy he's talking to. And Phil gets booed off of stage when he walks out, and he isn't Heavy D. The shot of the crowd and then Phil walking out to the bright lights is just amazing. I just love that comedy, and people start throwing shit at him and stuff. Oh my god, it's so funny. But I love how funny this episode is, just for like the little comedy bits. Like, as we said, like, this might be a shorter episode just because of the really tough stuff we were talking about with the last few episodes. But I just love how funny this episode is for, like, how rebellious and stuff it is. Like, the young at heart stuff just makes me smile.
Right. No, it's definitely very fun. It's like I said, I think this was especially, like, last couple episodes we recorded. I think this is a good palate cleanser. Because it's kind of like, obviously this episode you guys listen, like, oh, hey, we're not talking or it's not super long. It's like, this one's just, like, really kind of just more of a sitcom-y episode. And it's nice. Like, there's something that we talked about, like preservating, someone who's older in your family, but like, it's also not done like maliciously. I think next season we will have more conversation to have about Hattie and Phil's relationship, especially when she may be getting a new suitor. Like, I think that's probably where you can have more of those conversations. But I know I thought it was a very fun, very light episode. Got to kind of just, it like you get to relax your shoulders and watch this.
It's just funny because it's like just like that Hattie is able to be like, you can see her as the girl she probably was. Like, there's even a scene where she says like I've snuck out to more barn dances and midnight skinny dippings and all this other stuff. So she's had like a full life before the events of this episode, and I really love that. Like, it has this idea of because I think a lot of kids grow up with the idea that like their parents were never children themselves. And I love the little changes that this does for that episode, where it just like makes you realize like, no, like, our family and our parents and our grandparents had full lives before we showed up, and this is one of those like episodes that lets you know that.
And that's what I said. That's I think that's what's kind of it's kind of like wild about everything. And what's gonna be so weird, like, if I have kids, like, thinking like, oh, like, if I have kids, it would be like in my mid-30s, and it's just like, oh, I lived a full life and like to have them think like in like 15 years, and like even though like I'm not like super like going out and doing like wild shit or whatever, like they'll be like, wait, you used to do, you're old, and like that's gonna just be like like it's gonna go through. But yeah, we do have to realize like our parents and our other family members, like aunts and uncles and everything like that, like they lived full lives before we were here, and then we got here, and then it's like they may have changed, like, so we always have to be cognizant of that.
What do you think is going to be something your kids are going to be like, you really did that? Like, what do you think that's going to be?
Let's see. What dumb thing did I do that they were like, I don't, I've never done anything like wild dumb. I don't think so. Like, I mean, probably podcast. That's probably like the wildest thing I did. I went to a party once where people were skinny dipping, but I did not. But I did get really drunk, and then like the next day at work, I fell off a ladder and sliced my arm in half. So maybe that.
What would mine be? It would probably be me following you two on tour, like for 7 shows of their last tour.
See, that's bad. Like I've never done anything that cool. Like you're like, oh hey, what cool thing did you do? I got drunk at a party and then fell off a ladder at work. I followed you two on their tour for like seven stops. Like what? That's awesome.
Well, like I'm just thinking about it too, like in terms of like what will my kids freak out about, like, and I think it's just like it just reminds me of that episode where Phil was revealed to have like desegregated his farming community. And I'm just thinking about like all the little things I've done that will probably be something that like my kids or my nephews will look at and be like, that's pretty cool. Like dealing with the fact that I got a lot of racist comments when I went to New York Comic Con, or being the very first Swampy Creek person to be on a panel at San Diego Comic Con and stuff like that. Like, cause it's like even though like, yeah, you're always gonna think your parents are uncool and stuff, like there's still some stuff that they've done. And I love that when we get into later episodes, Will realizes this, because like we find out that Vivian and Philip were people that went to Selma, that they were people who were at riots, they were people who had water hoses turned on them and like dogs released on them. Like they had really they've dealt with the worst types of racism. And right. I like that we get into those parts of their stories later in these seasons. Like, because I would have loved to see what Hattie had experienced as a young woman. Like, that would be some. I think that's one of the missing links of this episode, is to find out what her story was.
Right.
And so,
well, especially like.
Oh, go ahead.
Especially like with how their life was. Like, they would have had to have been sharecroppers, or like the children of sharecroppers. So like, doing a lot of that farming, during like the 1940s and 50s, like how their life was affected and everything. That would have been super interesting to.
Well, in North Carolina too, like I don't know that much about, like we were talking about Canadian geography in the last episode, but like I don't know that much about the geography of the U.S. So would Hattie and Phil himself, would they have dealt with like having to see people being lynched and that sort of thing?
It depends. So like the thing with lynching is it's such a visceral thing. Like it's a thing that happens, but it's usually like with, like in kind of like urban sprawl is a weird way of saying it, but more communities where there's like more integration. Mm-hmm. I think with them being farmers, it may not have been a thing, but there is such a thing. Like if you guys are watching the show Lovecraft Country, mm-hmm. They were talking about like sundown cities where like, and especially like places in the South. And it's a thing that still happens today. If you're black, you do not want to be there when the sun is down.
Yeah.
That would have been the thing. So, like, they may not, like I said, I guarantee you they would have dealt with racism, but they may not have dealt with something like that drastic, depending on, like, how integrated or how much they dealt with white people to their day-to-day, activities.
Yeah, like, cause like, that's something that's still cause like North Carolina, like, where is that in the context of like the U.S.? Like, would that be considered the South?
Yeah, it's the South.
Okay.
North Carolina is like, it's like kind of like. So I'm in Florida. The state up before me is Georgia. The state up before that is South Carolina, and then the next state after that is North Carolina.
Why do y'all have so many like north-south country states?
That comes from
Slavery.
That comes not slavery. So that's what West Virginia's thing is. It comes from usually it being a bigger territory, and then for whatever political reason they are splitting off. Like I believe in the original 13 colonies, I actually want to say there was a split originally in the 13 colonies. Hold on, I want to make sure. I don't think it was just all Carolina, so hold on. All right, so
they wanted to marry their cousins or something.
I mean, it always is something stupid like that. So yeah, so in the 13 colonies, there was originally the split of North to South Carolina. And it's usually it has to deal with money and a lot of stuff that goes like into it. Like North Carolina is very well known for their tobacco, so I guarantee you it's probably like a tobacco crop thing, and then like the taxation in there, like probably the North wanted different and the South wanted different. Let's see. Yeah, slavery played an important role. Yeah, it actually was slavery. Wow. Learn something or remember something new every day, or learn something new every day. Slavery played an important role in the development of the Carolina colony. It split North Carolina and South Carolina. I want to say because South Carolina probably was, let's see,
pro-slavery.
Yeah, relied on slaves for cheap labor. Let's see. Yeah. No, I'm trying to see if I can't find this. Let's see. Yeah, I want to say, but it was slavery. It's always slavery. It's always, I mean, that's why there's West Virginia and Virginia split, because West Virginia was like, we would rather be part of the Union and not have slavery, and then they split.
Oh, I hear that. So North Carolina, and you mentioned sharecroppers before. What are they?
So sharecroppers. So during the Reformation era, or like after the Civil War, what a lot of the country did to kind of bring back wealth into the country and start getting African Americans to do that. They actually got plots of land that they kind of like leased out, and what they would do is they would work the land, you get the money, and then you'd use to pay that. It's what's called sharecropping. It's kind of like what gets set up in our agricultural system. And that's like how a lot of black people like found work after slavery ended.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I imagine after slavery too, they a lot of the people probably weren't educated. I imagine. Well, I guess and so like that was probably the quickest way to getting wealth. Well, as wealthy as you could be, like farming the land. So, so would Hattie herself have been a sharecropper, or would she have probably family who like?
She would have probably would have inherited, the land that her parents may have gotten.
Man, I love that we're like, if anyone's listening of anybody who's doing the reimagining of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, hire us as writers, because we just did a season arc about we just wrote a season arc in the last 5 minutes of this episode. So, absolutely, it could be it'll be about lynching and stuff, and like
Marcus Sherry, let us write. Let us write an episode. Let us write an episode.
Yeah, Grandma Hattie's origin story.
Look, if we want to do the serious like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like let us write a fucking like I said, like a Lovecraft County like episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like looking at like this. I would love that. One of these days I want to write something like about the South, like based in the South, because I just love my history.
Oh,
I
yeah.
definitely want to write something about
Well, because I like the only stuff I really learned about American history was, again, from episodes like this or like Anne Rice. Like, that's how
Right.
I learned about the South. Like, about, like... Because you do, like, generally learn about slavery in the Canadian history context, but we don't learn about things like what happened after slavery. Because everybody just thinks, oh, yeah, racism was over once that was done.
Exactly. There's a paper, and then racism died.
Yeah. But then you told me about Juneteenth last episode, about, like, how, like, there was still slaves 2 years after they were freed.
Yeah.
And like that blows my mind, because I'm like, so did like the owners just not tell them, or like what was the whole situation there? So it's
it's just like the whole state, like they just did not let them know that they were free.
oh my god, like that is the worst. So I imagine people were still being like snuck out and like running away and stuff. Like it is so bizarre to me. Man, I gotta learn more about this. I gotta go to the library right now. But I love I was trying to look up what a greasy pole was for this episode, because like we don't really have county fairs that way. So I think it was probably just like one of those games you play at like a fair where like you try to climb the ladder to get to this buzzer, and like the ladder is really unbalanced, so it'll try and knock you off. So I guess that's probably it. If you're from the South, let us know. I don't know what that is.
I have no idea what the greasy pole is either.
Yeah, apparently you have to climb it. I'm not sure. Anyway, like it's probably like a test of strength, like in Mulan or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be, maybe. Like you said, I don't know.
But yeah, send us your best sweet potato pies. That's what I really want.
Oh my God, yes. Let's do it.
Get your
I don't know,
grandmas to make them for us.
I don't know. Like maybe by the time this episode goes like to the public, out loud to the public, I might make a sweet potato pie and then put it on Twitter. I actually will do that. I'll make a sweet potato pie and then put it on Twitter.
That'll become one of our Patreon Patreon tiers. Like, get a sweet potato pie from us.
Look, I already owe somebody some cookies, so I would do that though. I would. Let's open up the Life of the Pool House Bakery.
The $50 tier is the sweet potato pie tier. So.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's pretty much the episode, and I'm really glad we were able to talk about like a non-complicated episode, because like even if we aren't the ones experiencing racism, to talk about the issues we face as a people is very mentally draining. Like, I don't know if you feel that way too, TL, but like to talk about these issues and how they affect us is really like soul draining in a lot of ways. Like, I know it sounds like we're being babies, but no, it's true. Like that episode we recorded with Kim, we needed to take time away because it brought up a lot of memories of our own university experiences.
Right.
Like, because personally, I had to take a break because, like, it brought up all those memories about being the only Native person in a white space. Like, and so, yeah.
I mean, I do think, like, there is such a thing as, like, being just, like, tired especially as a minority in dealing with, like, constant, like, just living your everyday life. Like, imagine, like, people who get tired of hearing people talk about this or complaining about this, like, imagine just living that. And it's like, it's draining. And it's like, when you're begging and pleading and crying for humanity, it's frustrating and it's tiring to do that. Especially when, like, all the news about you is like, oh, hey, did you know blah died and stuff like that. Like, it gets so frustrating. And like, it's an experience that that a lot of people don't have. And I think, like I said, me being a black man, like, there's the experience that I have, but like, you're also a woman, right? And I'm not using that, like, I'm not just saying like, you woman, but like, but like,
that adds a lot. That adds another level.
It adds another level, and then we're also cis, right? So like, imagine being a non-binary person or a trans person who's also a person of color, right? Like, there's so much. You can get so emotionally scarred. So I always like, I never demand to hear like when people are like, I think we talked about it last episode too. Like when people are like, "Oh, well, we demand to hear like why should we care about you?" I always feel like it's best just to care about these people or to care about people because like you don't know what people are going through. I never demand like you're black, you should speak on all this. No, you don't have to because like your black experience and everything. Now, if you say something stupid, if you're gonna be Candace Owens, yeah, I got words for you because that's a completely different thing. But it is not for everyone. Everyone doesn't have to pick up this fight and go through, and it is tiring to do that. And you should, I think it is okay for us when we have to deal with these things, especially when we have to deal with, like this first season, we had to deal with police brutality on the heels of someone dying. We've had to deal with like a lot of stuff happening, and it is like, it can just be emotionally just draining, and sometimes you just like, let me just step away and back away from it. And I think that's healthy to do.
Yeah, like, and I think like the episodes that we do deal with these issues, like, do tend to do it in a very positive way where it doesn't try to give you the answer the way Family Matters might. Like, because it doesn't play dumb with you. This is one of my favorite things about this show is that it doesn't try to tell you how to make things better. It just says that, like, there are ways to make this better, but it's, like, it involves not just one person, but everybody. Right. And, yeah, like, and for episodes like this, it's just great to just be somebody hanging out with your grandmother and sneaking out of the house. Like, I love episodes like that because I think this show balances the real world ramifications of being a person of color with, yes, you deal with racism, but you also have moments where your grandma's making you a pie. Like that, I think that's why I like this episode. It's because, yeah, you deal with this stuff too, but you also deal with the fun stuff of going to a concert. Right. So I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a fun episode. But that was this episode of Live from the Pool House. Sonya, is there anything you would like to promote?
Well, just Twitter as usual. I'm just hanging out there, like, just chilling, wishing I could go to a concert right now, but, like, we're in COVID times right now, so we will be back in concert soon, hopefully. And hopefully you'll see me at a Celine Dion concert next year wearing my Hank Williams World Tour t-shirt. Or send me one. I'm a size XXL, please. I like them roomy. So
we should if we ever do merch, that should be our first merch.
Yes, that would be so cool. Like Hank Williams World Tour. Oh my god.
Yeah, but we'll change it. Yeah. We should do it.
Or like those Colt Cabana shirts where it was I Jewish Star Colt Cabana? Yeah. I want one that says Sonya Jewish Star Colt Cabana. That's the one we're gonna make. And we'll give him some of the cuts of the proceeds.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Travis L. Foster. You can find the things that I do. Everyone online, I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/TurboBison. You can follow this show on Twitter on Pool House Live. And you go to patreon.com/Live from the Pool House, and give us some money. We have some cool things going up there soon that you're going to really want to be in there, including a Q&A with me and Sonya. So for Sonya, I am TL Foster. This has been Live from the Pool House. Don't get thrown out like jazz. I know.